So first of all, welcome everybody from my side. I'm very sorry you can't see me. I've no idea why that doesn't work. I'm certainly not hiding myself. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm very pleased to be able to be here today at this event and to be part of it. So welcome everybody from my side as well. The session which I'm going to give is about developing skills for the digital age. And if we can just go to the next slide, Fabio next. So I'll only introduce myself very briefly, and then I'll move on to say something about a little bit about the background of digital transformation, where we are now, what is the challenge, what is the opportunity. And then I'd like to talk about the skills that are needed in the digital age and the skills gap that we have in the digital age. And towards the end, I'll take you through some of the building blocks of digital skills development as well. So thank you for that. Somebody's just suggested I try and stop my video and then turn it on again. I will try that just to see if it works. You never know. Oh, there you go. That was a good tip. Thank you very much. You can see me now, I think.
Hi, Suzanne.
Yeah. So I'll only be very brief about this, who I am. I'm responsible for Exin's broad certification portfolio. Some of you may know it already. And in 2017, I was also appointed by the IFDC to the role of Verism Chief Examiner. And I'll say a little bit about Verism later in the presentation. But I think that's enough for now about me, because it's not about me today. Thanks, Fabio. So just a little bit of background. Where are we in the whole development? You know, the first industrial revolution was all about mechanization and steam power, water power. And then we had the second industrial revolution with mass production and the use of electricity. And then computers came onto the scene and changed everything. And we had some simple ways of automating things. But what we can think of now as the fourth industrial revolution is, of course, much more complex. It's about cyber physical systems. Think about Internet of Things, the use of artificial intelligence, mobile data. It's become a lot more complex. And the question is really, are we ready for it? Because it's almost moving more quickly than we can actually keep up with it. And actually, just before we go to the next slide, Fabio, I'm not sure if you were able to get that working, but I'd like to see if we can do the first poll. Is that possible? Fabio?
Yeah, I'm allowed to poll. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Just a minute.
Okay, great. I wanted to introduce some polls just to get you to try and think about some things and get some feedback from you guys. So yeah, perfect. Thanks, Fabio. So the first question, which I'd just like to put out there, is what is the status of your organization or your client's organization, it may be in some cases, in terms of digital transformation? So, you know, either it's completely digital, it's undergoing digital transformation and is nearly there, it's undergoing digital transformation and is struggling, or it's not started digital transformation yet. So I'd like you to just fill that in for a minute so we can see how that is.
We have more than 100.
That's a very good start. Guess we need to time box it probably, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you.
Pessoal, mais 20 segundinhos. Dez segundos para encerrar. Legal. 5, 3. Obrigado, pessoal, pela contribuição. I'll end the polling.
Great. Thank you very much, Fabio. So we can see that, you know, only a small percentage is saying that they're completely digital, but also there's only a very small percentage that have not started yet. Almost 40% of you are undergoing digital transformation, and it's nearly there. That's very encouraging. Almost half of you have answered with it's undergoing digital transformation and is struggling. And I think this is a very typical answer. I wouldn't expect it to actually be different, because what we see is that almost all organizations have realized the importance of digital transformation now, but they're struggling with it. And if we can use that as a bridge to go to the next slide, Fabio. Thank you. So in terms of the challenge of digital transformation, you know, most organizations these days have realized that it's not a nice to have, that it is completely necessary. And yet research indicates that 70% of digital transformation initiatives will not reach their stated goals. And that's around $900 billion of waste. Now that's massive. This was first reported by McKinsey, and since then has been reported by Forbes and the Harvard Business Review as well. So it's a big challenge. And if you look at, you know, what is causing this challenge, you know, what do we see as the things that are actually causing the challenge, you can see that there are a few red threads, let's say, a few things. One is unclear or aligned strategy and goals. You know, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve up front, you're not likely to actually achieve those goals. Another is the lack of the right mindset needed to bring about change. And I think Ari also talked about this in a lot of depth, making sure you have that business agility, thinking outside in. Quite often there's a lot of fear about change, and that can be a big blocker in digital transformation. A third reason is the capability gap. Quite often organizations during a proof of concept or a pilot phase, they will perhaps use consultants, buy-in expertise. And then when they start to scale up, they find that they have a capability gap within their own organization because they don't have those skills in-house. And the fourth reason is, you know, the lack of a holistic approach. I'm sure we're all familiar with silos. We've all experienced that at some point. So when it's not a holistic approach, then that can also, of course, be an issue when you get silos. Thank you, Fabio. So I really like this quote, and it's from Joe Peppard. He's principal research scientist at the MIT Sloan Center for Information Systems Research. And, you know, what he basically has said is that, and the slide's just gone off, so that's making it difficult for me, but I pretty much know it anyway. I'm sure Fabio will bring it back. But he says we shouldn't be looking to make our IT unit more savvy. We should actually be looking to completely not have a separate unit at all. I think it's the slide, a couple of slides before, or maybe one before, Fabio. Yeah, this blue one that we just had. So one ahead, yeah. So again, it's not about...
Sorry about the confusion.
No problem. So it's not about designing a more digitally savvy IT unit. It's about organizing in a completely different way. So, you know, not having a wholly separate functional unit at all anymore. And I like this because it's a different way of thinking. You know, most of us are still working in organizations where there is a complete, where there is a separate unit. But this is, you know, how we can avoid these silos. Okay, thank you, Fabio. If we can move to the next one. Of course, it's not only about the challenge, because if it was only about the challenge, it would be pretty sobering. It's also about the opportunity, and there's a massive opportunity offered by digital transformation. And this is just a couple of pieces of research. Some research from Deloitte has shown that organizations with a strong learning culture are 56% more likely to be first to market, and they're likely to outperform the profitability of their peers by 17%. And research from McKinsey has shown that data-driven organizations are 19 times as likely to improve ROI. And of course, both of these are all very important things in digital transformation. So digital transformation is partly about, one important element is being data driven and being able to use data to your advantage. Another important thing for data transformation is developing a strong learning culture. Fail fast, learn, relearn. So yeah, this is the opportunity that it offers to us. And I want to give you a few examples of that from, real life, let's say, if we can move on, Fabio. One is Johnson Controls, and Johnson Controls had the aim to basically, completely have a new operating model for automating and securing building operations for tech companies, sports stadiums and other large facilities. And they really used what they called a big bet, no regret approach to using modern technology. So it was a really kind of a big bang. They introduced a lot of modern technologies to support the company's strategy, and it got them success. In 2019, they were recognized as IoT Innovator of the Year. They won a lot of honors for leadership and training in the 2019 Human Capital Management Excellence Awards. And I guess most importantly from their perspective, it got them business success. So it's a true success story. And if we look on the next slide, this is, we can see how, Nancy Burse, the CIO of Johnson Controls, and she said that the challenge is identifying the right balance of technologies that provide the experiences and security that clients require. And I really like this, and I'll come back to this a bit later in the presentation, that idea of finding the right balance of technologies to meet the needs of your customers. So, what were these modern technologies that Johnson Controls used with such success? Well, it was, like I said, it was a kind of a big bang approach. They made use of cloud and edge computing. They made use of blockchain technology, which is obviously in a fairly early phases. They made use of robotic process automation, which is, a kind of subset, if you like, of artificial intelligence. They made use of cybersecurity to make sure that it provided the security that their clients needed. And they made use of analytics, so big data analytics, to make sure that they were again doing that big using that data driven to actually make decisions based around data. So these are the technologies that Johnson Controls used. Thank you, Fabio. I also want to share a couple of other examples with you from practice, and one is the European Central Bank, the ECB, which is the one controlling the euro, and they are actually an early adopter of Verism, which is an approach which I'll tell you a little bit more about later in the presentation. But I really liked their transformation journey and how they approached that. They wanted to make sure that all of their employees had shared goals and a shared vision on what they were trying to achieve. So they started off by saying, how are we perceived right now? And which words belong to that? And that produced words like process, documentation, control, paper pushing, all the kind of traditional things. And that's on that left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, they said, well, how would we like to be perceived? And that was, of course, very different words. That was about service, value. Ari also talked a lot about value, enabling, effectiveness. And then they looked at, okay, how do we think we can get from that left-hand side where we are now to that right-hand side where we need to be? And they called that their iceberg. That's that iceberg in the middle. And some of the things that they needed to do were quite simple. For instance, to introduce an iterative way of working, to further build the portfolio. But some of them were very deep in the behavioral way of thinking. Conquer fear. The decision to embark, to actually want to start the journey. Open our minds. So these are all very much to do with mindset and behavior. And they use this as a way of making sure that everybody had a shared vision of where we are and where we need to be. Thank you, Fabio. And on the next slide, what they also found within the ECB, obviously they're a very large financial organization, and they have to consider also a lot of compliance rules, regulations, laws. So they found that this was sometimes limiting, stifling their innovation. So they actually decided to do another approach to governance, and they called it minimum viable governance. Minimum viable governance. And what it meant was that they would look at each project individually and say, is this subject to a lot of compliance laws and regulations? If so, of course, it would need to have a high level of governance. But some other projects were not necessarily in that category, and they could be a lot more experimental, a lot more innovative, and they therefore needed a lot less governance to that. And that's what they called their minimum viable governance. So making sure that you only have just enough governance and not too much. And this enabled them to make great leaps in terms of innovation and being able to experiment. And a similar story I'd like to share with you, similar in the sense that Vocalink MasterCard is also a big financial institution. And in some ways, I think they did a similar exercise, but they had a slightly different approach. On the left-hand side, was where they were in terms of traditional IT. They were using waterfall. Ari talked a lot about it in the last session. They were working in silos. It was process-driven. IT was really seen as an overhead, as a cost. And moving towards the digital enterprise that they wanted to be was a lot more use of Agile and DevOps, a lot more data-driven. This keeps coming up again and again, the need to be data-driven. And IT was really used then as a source of revenue and really part of the business proposition. And if you can just click once more, Fabio, you can see that, they found that service management was a key capability for them in being able to realize this transition from traditional IT to digital enterprise. Thank you. And the last one I'd like to run you through is perhaps one a bit closer to home for many of you, Banco Pan. It's allocated 10% of its workforce to the digital transformation process, and it's looking to hire more staff with experience in Agile, with frameworks like Kanban and Scrum and the Agile mindset in order to support their goal. And, this was a quote from the HR director at Banco Pan, who basically pointed out that, these professionals with these skills are very much in demand, because almost all companies are either undergoing their digital transformation or they've already gone through it and they need to be able to give continuity to that. So these are very scarce skills, and I'll also come back to that in a couple of the next slides as well. So that was a little bit of background about, the challenge of digital transformation, but also the big opportunities that it offers organizations in terms of gaining competitive advantage in this digital age. I want to talk a little bit more now about digital skills, and particularly the skills gap. The World Economic Forum estimates that more than half of all employees will require significant reskilling by 2022. And, today, anno 2020, there are around estimated 756,000 unfilled jobs in the European ICT sector. Why? Because everything is moving so quickly that these skills are very much in demand, but it's moving more quickly than people can be skilled up and actually have the skills that organizations are needing. And if we look at that specifically for Brazil, because I know we have many visitors from Brazil, many attendees from Brazil, it's actually a very similar picture. The pattern in Brazil is the same as in Europe. It's actually worldwide. Projected annual demand for new talent between 2019 and 2024 is 70,000 professionals, 70,000 per year. But less than 50,000 people graduate each year in higher education with that profile needed to fill these vacancies. So with these digital skills, and that leads to a gap. The IT market may lack almost 300,000 professionals in 2024 if we can't somehow close that gap. And yeah, Forbes also talked about their top 5 digital transformation predictions for 2020. And you know, one of them was that digital upskilling will become a new battleground. And, you know, what they basically were pointing out is that organizations need to have these people with these skills, and these skills are very scarce. They're difficult to come by. So you almost get a kind of war for talent, and organizations will need to make themselves attractive to professionals with these skills in order to be able to attract them, because it's almost becoming a kind of battleground for skills. So, you know, what are these skills? Well, obviously, it's really important to be able to have an understanding of the different technologies that you can use for successful digital transformation. If you can't understand the technologies, you won't be able to do a successful digital transformation. So technological savviness is important. You need to understand the technology, but it's a lot more than that. And, you know, I think Ari has touched on some of these things. You need to have an agile way of working and an agile mindset to be able to be, just to be able to cope with change and to be able to embrace change. You need to be able to work in a collaborative way. That's also associated with agile working. You need to have an understanding of the business, because you need to be able to see how the different technologies can actually help you as a business. You need to have a kind of entrepreneurial spirit and be able to spot opportunities for innovation. And of course, you also need UX design thinking, because you need to be able to place yourself in the shoes of the user and design products and services in a way that appeals to the user. So if you think about it, this is a really broad set of skills that the professionals of today need, compared with, you know, 10 years ago, where it was primarily about the technical skills. And this is another way of looking at it. This is from, I think this is quite interesting because it's from LinkedIn research. They look at, you know, which skills are companies actually asking for in their job vacancies. And they found that there was a number of hard skills, and some of them I'll talk about, some of them we've already touched on, like blockchain, like cloud computing, like UX design, like artificial intelligence. It's all out there. But also the soft skills side of things. And again, it's some things which Ari touched on, some things which I've mentioned. It's about collaboration. It's about creativity, to be able to be innovative. It's about adaptability. So can you adapt to whatever changes there are? And those changes are happening very quickly. How adaptable are you? Emotional intelligence, I think somebody mentioned that in one of their questions. You know, being able to empathize and to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and be able to communicate with them effectively. So these are the kinds of skills. And I'd like to take this opportunity now, Fabio, if you don't mind, to do the second poll, because I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, or a question about digital skills.
Sure. Launching polling.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So the question is, you know, which digital skills are most lacking in your organization? Is that knowledge of new technologies like AI or blockchain? Is it collaborative and consumer-centric behaviors? Is it a change mindset based on business agility? Or is it about digital leadership and governance? Interested to know your thoughts. So please submit your answers. So I guess you'll control this on a time level,
Ok.
Fabio.
Pessoal, mais 15 segundos. Obrigado pela contribuição de todos. Ok, encerrando em 5. Obrigado, pessoal. Ending poll.
Thank you, Fabio. So we can see that almost 15% said it was mainly about knowledge of new technologies that was most lacking in their organization, such as AI and blockchain. Just over 15%, it was about collaborative and consumer-centric behaviors, 15% digital leadership and governance. And the one with the most votes, let's say, is a change mindset based on business agility. And of course, we heard Ari talking very much about this. I'm very aware, by the way, that these things are linked. And Ari said before, of course, if you don't have good leadership, you won't be able to achieve business agility. So these things are, of course, very, very linked as well. But yeah, that change mindset is the thing that many organizations are struggling with as what is lacking, because there's such a change needed to be done from, let's say, the traditional way of being to a digital enterprise in terms of business agility, being able to adapt to change, perhaps a different way of organizing things, which is quite often much less hierarchical and much more based upon trust towards your employees. And a lot of organizations struggle with this, and we can see that from this poll as well. Thank you, Fabio. So I'd just like to move through some of the building blocks. And again, there are many different ways of looking at digital skills. And I'm not saying for one moment that the building blocks I'm going to present here are the only ones. Of course, there are many different types of building blocks and different areas of knowledge. But one of the things we mentioned was technological savviness. You need to be able to understand the technology in order to know how it can work for you and bring your business forward. And one of those is cloud computing. It's obviously the the real thing that has enabled mobile data, Internet of Things. We expect to be able to do business anytime, anywhere today. And cloud computing has enabled that. And it's been a real game changer for startups, because in the past, only big organizations with a big infrastructure and a big budget were able to have the infrastructure needed. And with cloud computing and on-demand services, smaller startups can also compete on a level playing field. So it's been a game changer, and it's still one of the important building blocks for the enablement of that anytime, anywhere way of doing business. The second building block I'd like to mention is blockchain. And I think when we think of blockchain, we think very quickly about cryptocurrency, because it started within cryptocurrency. But actually, blockchain applications are moving forward away somewhat from cryptocurrency and more towards smart contracts. And the thing which blockchain really enables, it's trust. It's trust by design. And we're living in an era where trust is tricky sometimes. A lot of people don't trust big financial institutions. They don't trust governments. And blockchain can really help in building in trust by design. And it has big implications for sectors like logistics, the finance sector, but also governments. I think it's quite likely that we might, within a few years, be voting on an app making use of blockchain technology. So it has a lot of uses that are not to do with cryptocurrency, but which can be very useful in the digital age because of trust. And the third one I'd like to look at from the technological perspective in terms of technologies is artificial intelligence. And of course, there are some concerns around artificial intelligence as well, around the ethical side of it. So we need to be careful that we're using artificial intelligence for an ethical purpose, for a human-centric purpose. But if it's used effectively, of course, the power of artificial intelligence is in combining human and machine. Machines do some things better. They're better at managing and analyzing and interpreting large sets of data. They can do that much better than us. It's just the way it is. And of course, they're good in extreme environments. You can put a machine in outer space or in very cold or very hot. And this offers opportunities for human and machine, so that humans can do what they're good at. You know, we're good at leadership, giving judgment, showing empathy. Machines aren't good at empathy and judgment. And if we can combine human and machine, you know, what humans are good at with what machines are good at, that can be, of course, very powerful. And the fourth building block I'd like to talk to you about a little bit is about an approach to digital transformation. I'd like to give you a very short introduction to a new approach to digital transformation. It's an enterprise service management approach. And, you know, what I really like about enterprise service management is it kind of does away with the whole, you know, IT is serving the business and the business is the customer of IT. In an enterprise service management model, we think in a different way. An organization has to use all of its capabilities to deliver value to the consumer through products and services. And IT is a key capability in that, together with HR, sales, legal, finance, marketing, etc. And they all work together. And in this way, IT is no longer serving the business, but IT is an integral part of the business. And for me, this echoes back to the quote of the principal scientist from the MIT, you know, who talked about we shouldn't be having a separate unit anymore. We should be looking at how IT can be part of the integral part of the business. And that's what this is all about as well, with an enterprise service management approach. So Verism is a service management approach for the digital age. It basically gives you a lot of guidance around digital transformation. And something that Ari mentioned also triggered me as well, because Verism is not prescriptive. So Verism will not give you a checklist of things you need to tick and go through and then you've done it. Verism gives you principles and an approach, and you have to see how you can apply that and adapt it. But these are some of the things that are covered by Verism, and some of them we have mentioned already today in one context or another. Establish digital leadership. Ari talked about the importance of, if you don't have leadership thinking in a new way, in an agile way, you're not going to be able to make the culture change that you need. Establishing enterprise governance, so across the whole organization, not just IT centric. Defining a transformation approach. We saw how the European Central Bank and Vocalink MasterCard approach that by really looking at, you know, where are we now, where do we need to be? How to organize to embrace change. Again, all about business agility. Developing collaborative and consumer-centric behaviors. Really about behavior and mindset. Learn, unlearn, relearn. So failing fast and learning fast, and really having that learning culture as part of the culture of your whole organization. Identifying, closing the capability gap and managing that. And of course, developing awareness. You need to make sure that everybody within your organization is aware of this approach and that it's a shared vision. Otherwise, business agility will not be possible to achieve. And true culture only comes when you can take the whole organization with you in that. So these are some of the things which Verism covers, which can help with digital transformation in putting you in the right direction. And the other thing, the final thing I want to tell you about with regard to Verism is the management mesh. The management mesh is, you know, it's pretty simple. It just looks at resources, it looks at environment, it looks at management practices, and it looks at emerging technologies, and it allows you to create a mesh that's unique to your particular organization and that can be flexed and adapted based on new and changed requirements. And again, for me, this is really about that balance of technologies. If we think back to the quote of Nancy Burse from Johnson Controls, how do you find that right balance for your particular organization? How do you bring it together? And the management mesh can be a powerful tool to help you with that. Okay, I have one more poll at this point. I think we have time for it. Could we do the last poll, please, Fabio? So which type of management practices are your or your client's organization using? Is that only traditional practices? For example, ITIL, COBIT, ISO 20000. Is that only what we'll call for now progressive practices? Of course, some of them are quite established. Agile, DevOps, Lean, or is that a combination of traditional and progressive practices? So if you could submit your answers to that, that would be great.
Mais 15 segundinhos, tá, pessoal? Obrigado. Ok. Ending pool.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is pretty much what I expected to see. 60% are using a combination of traditional and progressive practices. Some of you are even only using progressive practices these days, and a small amount using only traditional practices. You know, most organizations these days have realized that there's no one silver bullet. There's many different practices that can be useful and that you need to combine them, you know, to get the best value. So the management mesh can be really useful in enabling you to let's say combine those traditional and progressive practices also with new technologies and manage them all under one model. Okay, thank you, Fabio. If we can move to the next slide. And actually, this is the last slide, or the one before last that I have. I think I've talked through the benefits for organizations in you know, digital transformation, the challenge, but also the opportunity. But what about you as a you know, an individual professional? Sometimes that can be different. And what we can see is that this was from a research which was done by Pearson VUE about the benefits of skills development and getting certified. And what people said was that it really helped them on the job, so helped them to perform complex tasks more confidently, improve their ratings, be more efficient in their role. And also, even with 30% of them, they directly got a salary raise as a result of getting certified, and other benefits were positive impact on image and reputation, helping them move into a career in IT or get a promotion or get a job. So yeah, for the professional as well, there's a lot in it. We've seen how scarce those skills are and how much in demand those skills are. And if you can stay ahead of the game and make sure that you develop those skills, then as a professional, as an individual, you're also putting yourself in a good place in the market. So if we can just, the last slide is just where you can, how you can connect with me and get some more information. I think if I'm right, there are a few minutes left, Fabio. So maybe, is it helpful if I look at the Q&A myself and see if there's questions there, or do you want to do that yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Just to stop the presentation. Thank you so much, Suzanne. So, Suzanne, we have a question. The Verisme approach, it's seems me a big project to make it in an organization. So do you see this initiative born as a ad hoc initiative, or it's the company shall assemble the project to this journey?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. I think it's about the complexity of implementing an enterprise service management approach, because you know, we're all used to working in this way of business and IT, and how do you get the whole organization there? So of course it isn't easy, But there are some early adopters of Verism that we have some early case studies. And like I mentioned, the European Central Bank is working with it, Vocalink, MasterCard, and there are some others, Kabu.com, for instance, in Japan. So there's a number of different organizations that have started working with it and started to see the benefit of it. And yeah, it's not easy. It's never going to be easy to do an enterprise-wide approach, but the question is whether we can afford to not do so anymore, because if we continue to see IT as a separate unit, separate from the business, we won't be able to take advantages fully of the opportunities offered by the digital age.
Yeah, we have a lot of silos.
Yeah.
To make this really difficult in organizations. When I think in digital transformation, how the company can access if they're really digital or not? Is there a model? What do you think about that? When a company is digital or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things about digital transformation is, in some ways, you could say the journey never ends, because you know, we have a situation now where a lot of organizations are coming from a very traditional background and they need to adapt quickly. And I think COVID has even accelerated that for a lot of organizations, because a lot of organizations that maybe thought they had a lot of time have seen that they've needed to suddenly do a very quick acceleration to an online way of being because of COVID. But yeah, I think it's more like it's continual, it's ongoing. You can say, okay, we've done a number of different things and we've got to a stage where we can say we're ready for the digital age, where you know, for example, we've got a culture of a learning culture, of business agility. We can adapt to change. So you can say that you can, of course, assess your maturity level on those kinds of aspects. But in some ways, the journey will never end, because, you know, the next change is just around the corner. So you can never really say we're fully there and now we can relax and we're ready, because we never know what's round the corner. And I think Ari also said that well in his as well. It's about being adaptable for whatever is coming. You know, we now have particular challenges, and of course COVID has been one of them, but the next challenge is never far away. So it's just being about being able to adapt to whatever challenge that is. And I think that's very much part of being digital, is being able to make that adaptation.
Yeah, that's true. Suzanne, thank you so much for your contribution. Welcome. Thank you so much.